Good morning and welcome to the 2017 Mayoral Forum on News and Talk 1380 WOK and the People Station V103. My name is Ryan Cameron from the Ryan Cameron Morning Show with Wanda Smith on the People Station V103. This morning, Atlanta, you're going to hear from the top 9 candidates for mayor of Atlanta. This election, we will see a real major change in city government. It'll include a new mayor, new city council president, at least 7 new representatives of the Atlanta City Council, and at least 3 new reps on the Atlanta School Board. For those of you who have never listened to a debate, let's talk about the format today. We'll have 4 segments. Candidates will introduce themselves. We'll also have questions from journalists, also audience questions, and closing statements. If you are an audience member here, of course, at the Woodruff Art Center, we ask that you get your index card and your pencil to write down your question, and please list the name of the candidate that you want the question to be directed towards. Now, please welcome the candidates for mayor of the city of Atlanta. Peter Amon, Keisha Lance Bottoms, John Eves, Kwanzaa Hall, Caesar Mitchell, Mary Norwood, Michael Stirling, and Kathy Willard, and Vincent Fort. Let's give them all a round of applause as they come to the stage this morning. We will have our timekeepers here in the audience. For those who may be unfamiliar with the candidates, what we'll do is include a brief bio in alphabetical order and then give each candidate 2 minutes to present their platform. So as they get seated, we'll read each candidate's bio and then they'll make their basic elevator pitch to those of you who may be undecided. All right, another round of applause for all of our candidates this morning. And if we can get everybody to just go ahead and, we're going to go in alphabetical order, so you can grab those microphones. We're passing out waters in case those of you in Radio Land are like wondering what's going on. That's what we're doing right now, okay? First, we have Peter Amon, who is the founder of the Atlanta Police Foundation. He served as the chief operating officer of the city of Atlanta. Under Mayor Kasim Reed, he has worked for nearly 20 years to make Atlanta a stronger, better city for all of its residents. Peter, the platform is yours for 2 minutes.
Great. Thank you so much for having us here this morning. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to all of you in the audience and all of you out there driving rapidly through Atlanta, I'm sure. Again, my name is Peter Amon. My mom was a public school teacher and served on the public school board that I went to school in. My dad was on the town council. And so I grew up in a household where everything that we talked about at dinner practically, other than my grades and some other stuff that was less fun, was about how cities and towns could help people and how they function and operate. I then went on to Duke University, got a degree in public policy and history. From there, I went on to Wharton and got an MBA. I spent much of my professional paid career working for a consulting firm, helping some of the largest and most complex organizations in the world improve customer service and operations. I became deeply involved in the city of Atlanta in 2001 when I cold called Mayor Franklin and offered free consulting support. And what followed was a number of years of me leading teams of consultants for free for the city to try and help improve operations. From there, I was asked to take a 1-year leave of absence from my company. That turned into 2, and I was the chief operating officer of the city, responsible for the operations of the city on a day-to-day basis. I'm running for mayor because I believe in an Atlanta where when you're born, you have access to early childhood learning wherever you're born and whatever your income level is. I believe in an Atlanta where you feel safe and are safe in your neighborhood. I believe in an Atlanta where you can get from one spot to the other spot with a lot of options and a lot faster than you can do today. I believe we can advance Atlanta together.
Thank you, Peter. Next up, we have Keisha Lance Bottoms, most recently represented District 11 on the Atlanta City Council and served as Executive Director of the City of Atlanta and Fulton County Recreation Authority. She has helped grow the city's reserves from $7.4 million to nearly $150 million in just over 5 years and has helped balance the city's budget each year without increasing taxes. 2 minutes, Keisha Lance Bottoms.
Good morning, Atlanta. I am Keisha Lance Bottoms, and Atlanta is a tale of two cities. I am the only candidate who has lived and worked in both those places. My father was an entertainer by the name of Major Lance. He was a wonderful man, and at 8 years old, I learned that sometimes wonderful, good people make bad decisions. I came home from school to find my dad being led away in handcuffs. My life changed forever. But my grandmother used to tell me all things work for the good of those who love the Lord. That very challenging time in my family's life really is the reason I stand here today. What I saw around me was a community, a beloved community, that showed me that there was something much bigger in my future than visiting prisons on weekends across this state. It showed me that there was a path for me to graduate from Frederick Douglass High School, Florida A&M University, Georgia State University College of Law. And as fate would have it, I went on to serve on the bench in Fulton County as a judge, alongside the very man who prosecuted my dad for his criminal offenses. Atlanta is still a beloved community. I have 4 children. What I want in this city is for it to be the beloved community for them that it was for me. But it cannot be if it is not for each of your families and your communities. That is why I am running for mayor. There is a future much bigger than all of us. And this election is not just about those of us who will vote today. It's about decisions that we will make for generations to come. I hope to earn your support.
Keisha Lance Bottoms. John Eves has served as chairman of the Fulton County Board of Commissions for the past 10 years, where he worked with the county's mayors and councils to address regional issues, including violent crime, public health, and homelessness. John Eves.
Good morning. Once again, my name is John Eves, and I want to be your next mayor. Friends, this election is about leadership and integrity. For the past 10 years, you have trusted me as the head of the largest local government in the state of Georgia. I represented 1 million people, worked with the mayors of 15 cities, oversaw a budget of about $1 billion. And as a result of my leadership and working with various constituencies, did great things in this county. We saved Grady Hospital. We brought the most sweeping criminal justice reform in the history of Fulton County under my watch. We did economic development along Fulton Industrial Boulevard, North Fulton and South Fulton. And in last year, November of last year, we did the first ever passing of a transportation SPLOST that will generate $655 million over the next 5 years. We did all of that and more with a corruption-free government. Today, my friends, City Hall needs a massive overhaul. We have corruption that's present, that's systemic, and I believe that it's a part of the culture. Maynard Jackson, who is a very esteemed former mayor of this great city, had a motto, showing up. Friends, I state to you today that the folks on this stage have not shown up. We have a city that is unsafe. I believe, as one of my platform areas, that all people deserve to be safe. We have a city in which our neighborhoods are falling apart. There are 252 neighborhoods that are falling apart. I went to Westmont Estates last week. It's falling apart. I believe that all of our neighborhoods should be economically vibrant and affordable. We need to have a strong partnership with the Atlanta Public School System. We need to do all we can to relieve traffic in our region and the city of Atlanta. And last but not least, we need to restore trust back into City Hall. John Eves, wanting to be your next mayor. Thank you so much.
Thank you, John Eves. Vincent Fort is a career educator and has been a member of the Georgia State Legislature for the past 20 years. He served as a minority whip of the Georgia Senate, where he led the fight against predatory lenders and reformed local law enforcement practices. Vincent Fort.
Good morning. I'm running for mayor of the city of Atlanta because I think City Hall has lost its way. And what I mean by that is that City Hall, City Council, has looked out for the 1% as opposed to the 99%. City Hall has neglected neighborhoods. They've forgotten what makes this city great. It's not skyscrapers and stadia. What makes this city great is people in its neighborhoods. Unfortunately, Atlanta may be a tale of two cities, but if it's a tale of two cities, it's because some of the people on this stage have been complicit with it, have made it a tale of two cities. While our neighborhoods were in decline, while we became one of the most gentrified cities in the country, the most unequal city in this country, City Hall was doing the bidding of rich developers. People can talk about how they watched out for regular folk, but don't believe the hype. Don't believe the hype. It's not, and I just want to emphasize, it's not a matter of where you come from necessarily. It's a matter of who you fight for. And unfortunately, City Hall has watched out for stadium owners, have watched out for people who are going to make it. What we need is a City Hall and a mayor that watches out for regular people. That's why I'm running for mayor. This is a time when we have to be very serious because there's an arc of neglect going on from Bankhead to McDonough Boulevard. And you're going to have to decide who you trust to fight for regular people in this city. Thank you.
Vincent Fort. Kwanzaa Hall has been a public servant since high school. He served on the Atlanta Public School Board and for the past 12 years has represented District 2 on the Atlanta City Council, where he passed legislation to increase public safety, affordable housing, and accessible transportation. Kwanzaa Hall.
Thank you, Ryan, and thank you to WAOK and V103 for having me. I reflected this morning on the first time I was on V103 and AOK. It was 1989, and I was the president of Mays High School. And I formed a youth group to stop the violence, and we reduced the violence in Southwest Atlanta by 40%. Mayor Andrew Young and Mayor Maynard Jackson both gave us accolades and proclamations for the great work we had done. And now I sit here today and I think about how my father, before I was born, was locked up in Montgomery, Alabama for organizing. He was locked up many, many times for experiencing the hatred and the violence and the discrimination that now we have come to enjoy on the opposite side. And the legacy that he has given me as a young man and now as a leader in our city, to be able to do the work that so many great people in the civil rights movement gave their lives for, is really one of the reasons why I'm running for mayor. I just passed a law, changed the law in our city to protect young African-American men who've been in the margins, who have been marginalized and discriminated against for possession of less than an ounce of marijuana. There's facts that say that young men and women, white and black, use marijuana the same. But in terms of who's incarcerated in our jail right now, 92% of those are young African-American men, and we experience more pain than anyone else. Atlanta doesn't need a white mayor, black mayor, gay mayor, or straight mayor. Atlanta needs a great mayor, a mayor who will put people and neighborhoods first, as I've done with real action, real legislation that I've passed. I'm Kwanzaa Hall, and I'll be everybody's mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Kwanzaa Hall. Caesar Mitchell has, for the past 16 years, been a member of the Atlanta City Council, serving as an at-large council member and the second highest seat in city government, the 7th president of the Atlanta City Council, where he has worked to improve life through education, community building, and economic opportunity. Caesar Mitchell.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you to V103 and WOK for hosting this very important forum. It takes a village, not only to raise a child, but really to make a city great. And I grew up in this village. I grew up to a mother who was a school teacher and a father who passed away just 2 days before my 10th birthday. And my mom had to figure out, as a single mother and a school teacher here in APS, how to raise 2 boys. But here's where the story really gets great. We had an entire village, teachers, a rec center. We had an entire community to wrap their arms around us and provide the kind of care and love that a child needs to grow up in this city. I'm running for mayor because I want this city to become a village again. And it's going to become a village when we are able to focus in on education. It's going to become a village when we're able to reduce crime. It's going to become a village when everyone in this city has an opportunity to live in this city where they work. So we've got to create affordable housing. We've got to make sure that we're providing police officers and teachers and nurses and firefighters and the creative class with the opportunity to live in this city. We've got to reduce crime. My father walked a footbeat as an Atlanta police officer right here in this city. When I am mayor, we're going to make sure that every police officer is walking on a footbeat. As a council member, I passed legislation requiring all of our police officers to walk on a footbeat when they came out of the academy. I've also been very focused on education. For 12 years, I've had a program, and in fact, I've had an opportunity to come on V103 and talk about it, that really provided us an opportunity for young people to get one step closer to college and career. It's called the College Prep Series. As mayor, I'm going to work hard with APS to make sure that every child has an opportunity to meet his or her potential. I'm going to also make sure that we are working to get opportunities for small businesses to grow in this city, because small businesses provide the greatest opportunity to provide jobs in this city. As mayor, I'm going to set the tone from the top, and we're going to bring to an end this culture, this climate of corruption, and we're going to make sure that we're making this city a place where we can all move forward and leave no one behind. I'm Caesar Mitchell.
Caesar Mitchell. Mary Norwood has been a member of the Atlanta City Council for more than 11 years, representing at-large Post 2, where she helped to establish initiatives in the Fulton County court system and has been an advocate for work opportunities for homeless and underemployed Atlanta residents. Mary Norwood.
Thank you, Ryan, and thank you, Rashad. I am delighted to be here with V103 and WAOK. Your service to our community is invaluable. Black radio is one of the most important outlets that we have in the country. I grew up with black radio. I worked for a radio company that had an entire string of rhythm and blues stations on the air back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. WCIN in Cincinnati with Jack the Rapper. WVOL, where Oprah Winfrey worked. WLOU, where Monica Kaufman worked. And Wild Radio in New Orleans. And our stations were wonderful and served the community, so I'm delighted to be here. I have served the city of Atlanta for 25 years, either as a community advocate or as an elected official. It has been important work to me. I have been protecting communities and preserving neighborhoods for 25 years. That's what I want to do as your next mayor. I want to restore the trust of the community in city government. It is frayed, it is not where it ought to be, and I have had the honor of having served the city. I want to make sure that I deliver a responsive, accountable, transparent government so that every single community in this town is safe, is clean, is sustainable, is affordable, and is prosperous. It means a great deal to me to make sure that every single citizen in our town receives the attention and care that they deserve, from our youngest students and children to our seniors. I will be the mayor for all of Atlanta, and I hope to serve you next year.
Mary Norwood. Michael Stirling has served as the former senior advisor to Atlanta Mayor Kasim Reed and as the executive director of the City of Atlanta Workforce Development Agency, where he restructured the organization to improve efficiency and expanded services into 3 additional locations. Michael Stirling.
Thank you so much, Ryan, and thank you, V103 and WAOK, for hosting this important conversation. My name is Michael Stirling, and I want to be the next mayor of Atlanta, Georgia. You know, in 1974, when Maynard Jackson was running for mayor, he said this. He said, "Politics is not perfect, but it is the best nonviolent opportunity we have to bring about change in our society." And right now, the city of Atlanta needs some change. We've got the worst income inequality in the country. We are the most unequal city in the country when it comes to the income of our residents. We've got the worst economic mobility in the country. You have a 4.5% chance of climbing out of poverty if you were born in the city of Atlanta. We've got unequal educational access for our students, unprecedented corruption in City Hall. We face a number of challenges, but here's the good news. Politics is the best nonviolent available means we have to bring about change, and our city needs some change right now. As someone whose life started in an orphanage, I understand personally the awesome power of public service. You see, my life is different because a public servant was willing to help me as a young baby in an orphanage find the family that every child deserves. And my life was all the different because of it. So I went to Morehouse College and I graduated from law school, and I was appointed as one of the youngest federal prosecutors in the country by Eric Holder. I worked at the same law firm as Barack and Michelle Obama. And so I had these opportunities because 34 years ago, a public servant stepped out on nothing and helped me. And right now, we got to get back to that in our politics in the city of Atlanta. The politics of making sure we're making a difference in the lives of people who need the help the most. We've got to do that. And right now, the city of Atlanta needs change. Politics at its best calls on us to be hopeful about the challenges that our city face. So even though we have unprecedented challenges, I am hopeful about what we're going to do when I am mayor of Atlanta, about how we're going to address these challenges. I look forward to earning your support. Michael Stirling for mayor of Atlanta. Thank you.
Michael Stirling. Kathy Willard is the first woman to serve as president of the Atlanta City Council, where she championed the Atlanta Beltline and led the move to pass a civil rights bill that protects Atlantans from discrimination in housing, employment, and public accommodations. Kathy Willard.
Thanks so much, Ryan. It's great to be here. Good morning, everybody. I'm fighting for ATL. If you take one thing away from this debate, remember me, fighting for ATL, affordability, transportation, and livability. This election is about how we triple in size in the next 25 years and who gets to stay and who gets to move on. And I want to make sure that we build housing with a range of housing choices, from homeless to kids just out of school to people regardless of income and family size, and so seniors can age in place. We have to build a transportation system that works. Part of the idea of the Beltline, really the whole idea of the Beltline, was to build density around a permanent transportation infrastructure. I've got a plan to build 5 lines of transit simultaneously, connect sidewalks and bike lanes to that transit so people can get from their homes to work, to play, to wherever they want to be without using their cars. And livability means making sure that every school in this city works, partnering with APS to make sure we're building communities that are healthy and safe, that have great parks, that have art, and building that all together so that our future is solid, so that everybody gets to be here, and that Atlanta's the world-class city we all know it to be. Remember, I'm Kathy Willard. I'm fighting for ATL, affordability, transportation, and livability. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Let's have a round of applause for all of our candidates this morning. Again, if you're just joining us, that concludes our first segment, which is where the candidates introduce themselves. Next up, we'll have the journalist questions, and then the audience questions, and then closing statements. We'll be back with more of the 2017 Mayoral Forum on News and Talk 1380 WOK and the People Station V103. The ATL's #1 for hip-hop and R&B. The next segment will be led by my colleague Rashad Ritchie from News and Talk 1380 WOK. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with more after this on V103 and WOK.
Welcome back to the People Station V103 and News and Talk 1380 WAOK. This is the Atlanta Mayoral Forum. We want to say thank you to our radio audience as well as to those viewing by way of Facebook Live. And thank you to the live audience we have today. I will conduct this second segment, Q&A. I'm Rashad Ritchie, the midday host for WAOK. I provide political commentary for V103. I hold a PhD in political science and am a university professor. My colleague, Maria Boynton, is the morning news anchor for V103 and WAOK. She joined CBS Radio Atlanta following 20 years of covering presidential campaigns and the Georgia General Assembly for several years. Before joining CBS Radio Atlanta, Maria spent more than a decade as an anchor and producer at the CNN radio network. Maria has earned many honors, including 2 Peabody Awards, 2 DuPont Awards, and various Associated Press Awards in Georgia, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. Candidates, this segment, you will have 1 minute to answer the question. If you invoke the name of your opponent, 30 seconds will be given to that opponent to respond. So choose your answers wisely. Maria Boynton will ask the first question.
Good morning to each and every one of you. The first question concerns housing. Of course, we know displacement is a big issue in this city. The median family income in the city of Atlanta for whites is $82,000, and for blacks is $26,000. The cost of a 2-bedroom apartment rental in Atlanta ranges from $949 to $1,719 per month. A person, family, would need a yearly salary of $37,960 or at least $18.29 per hour to afford the least expensive rental. My question to you, and we'll begin with Mr. Amon, what is your definition of affordable housing and your plan to increase affordable housing in the city?
Thank you very much, Maria, for that question. This is one of the questions that comes up the most in the city of Atlanta. And given the great disparity we have in income in the city of Atlanta, it's probably one of the most important that we can address. I define affordable housing down to 30% and below of area median income. What that means is that somebody making minimum wage or less, if they don't have a full-time job, is able to afford housing in the city of Atlanta. What that means is we're talking about $400 or $500 a month. There's about 15 different tools cities and towns can use to increase affordable housing. I'm going to bring the will and commitment to make this a top priority of my administration. We will have more affordable housing. I'm also going to bring the skill to use these complex tools and to find the money to fund them. It's absolutely imperative.
Ms. Bottoms?
Thank you for the question. When we talk about affordable housing, we also have to talk about workforce housing, not just about people who are making minimum wage, but we have to talk about our school teachers and our police officers and people who work at the post office. That is why I introduced legislation asking the city of Atlanta to create displacement-free zones. We saw the first zone rolled out, Vine City English Avenue, and what that does is a public and private partnership. It has created a fund that helps offset rising property taxes and also gives money to people to help fix up their houses. That is the type initiative that we have to have throughout this city, and I look forward to expanding that throughout this city as mayor, because if this city is not affordable for people across the spectrum, then we have lost the very fabric that makes Atlanta great.
Thank you. Mr. Eves.
So, Maria, to add to your stats, you have 32,000 people who own homes in Atlanta who are 55 years and older. It drops down to 18,000 who are 65 years and older. So you have a reduction in terms of seniors having housing. And also Atlanta is number one in terms of evictions from apartment rentals. So what I do among the options that are available, I would reform the tax situation for property owners. I froze the property taxes assessments in June the 21st for 300,000 people in Fulton County. But I'll go a step further. I think there's a great opportunity for us to give seniors, particularly those on fixed income, a break in terms of paying the school tax, which is half of the tax. A lot of folks in Atlanta are leaving this city, going to Cobb County, going to Gwinnett County, and going to DeKalb County. So that's what I would do to fix this problem.
Senator Fort.
Yeah, let me answer that question in two ways. One thing I will not do is displace people in the city of Atlanta. If you go to Peoplestown on Atlanta Avenue, you will see mostly a vacant block on Atlanta Avenue. 30 families, 30 African-American families were displaced by the city, the use of eminent domain and evictions. And these city council members that you see here, they all voted for it. If you want a displacement-free zone, you shouldn't have voted to put those families in the street. 4 of those families are pushing back. 4 of those families went to court to resist that. But one thing I will not do is use the power of my office to displace families in the city of Atlanta in that fashion. 2, I'm going to hold the Beltline accountable. We're going to hold the Beltline accountable and make sure that they follow through with their commitment that they made 12 years ago to build affordable housing. 6,000 units promised, less than 1,000 built.
Mr. Hall.
Yes. Thank you. Well, first of all, rents are too damn high, just tell you the truth. And we can fix it. So affordability to me should really be based on neighborhood, based on income, based on longevity in a community, and proximity to transit. because it all changes. Our city is very diverse, and it has different characteristics that help you to define where affordable really is. If you're in Buckhead, affordable is different. If you're in Southwest Atlanta, it's very different. The other piece of it is we have 11 former Atlanta Housing Authority properties, 400 acres. My plan is to do at least 50 units per acre. That will give us a bare minimum of 20,000 units, but really there's another 5,000 empty houses, 4,000 or 5,000 empty apartment units. We're going to repopulate all those units. I've said this first. I'm going to continue saying it. I have a plan. I've done this before. We just created 500 units of affordable 2 months ago that we funded. We've also done affordable along the Boulevard corridor. We preserved it, and we can do more. Thank you.
Mr. Mitchell.
Affordable housing is housing that anyone can afford to live in regardless of your income. And we got to create more affordable housing in this city. There's no one on this stage that's done more work as a lawyer and as a policymaker than I creating affordable housing in this city, whether it's for seniors or young families looking to reach the American dream. As mayor, I'm going to create at least 20,000 new affordable housing units in this city. We're going to take vacant and abandoned homes in this city, and we're going to turn them into affordable homes where teachers and police officers and firefighters and the creative class can live, grow, and thrive. We're going to partner with the Atlanta Housing Authority, MARTA, and APS to ensure that we're working with them to create affordable housing on the property that they own. That's an incredible opportunity. But it takes setting leadership and the tone from the top. I plan to do that as mayor. But we're also going to make sure we're putting good policy in place. And I've created a lot of policy to create affordable housing, but it takes a mayor willing to execute that policy. When I'm mayor, I'm certainly going to do that. Thank you.
Ms. Norwood?
Well, there's several things. Number one, yes, we need to work with AHA, with the Housing Authority, for that very low $15,000, 30% AMI. Secondly, we have examples of affordability in some apartment complexes in the city that have done a great job of having their apartments, their complexes clean, having them safe, having daycare on site, and so we need to replicate that across the city. If you can do it in a few places, you can do it in a lot of places. Third, we need to have workforce housing where you can get closer to where you work, and I want to see an employer-assisted workforce housing program so that the people that are at low income, and every industry has them, can get closer. It will help us with transportation, with our traffic congestion. It will help them with their transportation costs and with their housing costs.
Mr. Stirling.
Yes, thank you so much for the question, Maria. Michael Stirling. You know, we didn't get here by accident. Those statistics that you laid out are absolutely deplorable, and I believe that our political status quo has really failed when it comes to providing affordable housing. No one in the city of Atlanta should pay more than 30% of their annual income on their housing. So that's how I define affordable housing. You should not be spending more than 30% of your take-home income on housing. And you include in that transportation. Here's what I would do. One, I would advocate for mandatory inclusionary zoning. That means that any developer that's building new properties in the city of Atlanta, they are going to be required to include within that development affordable housing units. Two, I'd look for innovative solutions in the city of Atlanta like micro-housing and container homes. I'd work with the Atlanta Housing Authority on their Vision 2022 to make sure we're increasing the number of affordable units. And I'd also hold the Beltline accountable for the affordable housing units that they promised to create when the city of Atlanta approved it. Thank you.
Ms. Willard?
Thanks for the question, Maria. So to answer your question specifically, the real crisis is for people who are at probably 40, 30% AMI, because those are the folks who have absolutely no options to move across town or anywhere else. They need to be secure right where they are. But there's a whole bunch of things we need to do. We spend so much time debating the definition of affordability, and of course that relates to how big your family is, what your income is, all kinds of other things, how much your transportation costs. So we've got to do a number of things. One, tax policy, you know, increase the homestead exemptions, make sure that people can, you know, seniors have adjustment on the APS school board tax, that kind of thing. Secondly, use the vacant land that we have to build permanently affordable housing forever, right? On the 400 or 500 units APS, AHA owns, city-owned property, other kinds of things, the Beltline-owned property. And then transportation. Make sure that we are building transportation options so people can get around the city without a car, because when you combine high rents and cars, you got a problem.
Thank you. This group has been called extreme. They've even been called a terrorist organization. Some say they are the voice of a generation. Let me begin this question with Kwanzaa Hall, and we'll go to his right and then come back to Vincent Fort and his left. Kwanzaa, what are your thoughts about the movement Black Lives Matter?
I'm a supporter. I think it's very necessary. You know, every generation has its own way of expressing the pain and the stress and the discrimination that we feel as people of color in this country. And this is the new manifestation of that. I believe that we have to stand with the young people, help them to fight for the things that we all know are right, as I've done with criminal justice reform in our city, starting with banning the box on felon reentry, moving on to the pre-arrest diversion program, removing the quality of life crimes, 40 of those, and most recently marijuana possession being a non-jailable offense and a ticketed fine for $75, up to $75. So, you know, they've been a really strong group. They're intelligent, brilliant young people who care, they have passion, and they just need to be loved by our city and by our nation. And I think we should continue to embrace them. Thank you.
Thank you. Caesar?
Well, of course, I support Black Lives Matter. They represent really the spirit of a community. They represent the spirit of young people stepping up and saying, we're not going to take it anymore. We're going to make sure we're fighting for justice, we're fighting for equality, we're fighting for equity, and we're fighting for opportunity. And their simple request to all of us who are in public service is for us to do our part. So I think it's very important for Black Lives Matter to continue to voice their concerns, to stand up and to speak up every day in every way. Because when you do that, you put pressure on the political sector to do what it's supposed to do through policy and through initiatives in the community. So if you ask me, I think they play a very necessary role from outside in terms of making sure that we are doing what we're supposed to do in the public sector. As City Council President, whenever Black Lives Matter members come to City Hall, they always have a voice, and they can always stand up, and they can always speak up. And even sometimes over the chagrin or over the disappointment of my colleagues, I've always let them speak. Because when they speak, we get good ideas. When we get those good ideas, then we create real solutions. Thank you.
Yes, I support Black Lives Matter. I support every movement all the way back to when I was growing up in the 60s that supports equality and justice and fairness for everyone. I want to make sure that as the next mayor, we have community policing, we have our police officers embedded in the community, which is why I have served as co-chair of the Code Enforcement Commission and went to the state capitol to make sure that the houses that we could never get our hands on will be able to be recycled and have police officers, firefighters, teachers, and city workers be in affordable housing in our communities. That will go a long way toward making sure that every single person and every life is honored in this town.
You know, as the millennial in this race, I know a lot about Black Lives Matter and why it started. It started really for two reasons. One, we were seeing unarmed black people being shot down by the very people who were supposed to serve and protect us, and there was no accountability for what we were seeing happen. And so the response to that was to call attention to the conscience of this country and to remind them that black people matter too, that black lives in fact do matter, and that if people are going to be shot down in the street and by the very people who are supposed to serve and protect them, they ought to be held accountable. And so I absolutely support the movement that calls on the conscience of the country to make sure that we are protecting black people and that black people's lives in fact do matter. You know, there's a candidate in this race who, when someone from Black Lives Matter went to speak at City Council, they said the biggest threat to black men were other black men. And I think that that is unfortunate. And what we ought to do, we ought to be focused on making sure that we call the conscience of the country to understand that black lives in fact do matter and that anybody who shoots an unarmed black man should be held accountable.
I support the Black Lives Matter movement too, because, you know, this has raised, the group has raised such an important discussion about race and racism in this country, and I hope that they continue to build strength and continue to talk about important matters as we go, not just police shootings, but income inequality, voting rights, all kinds of things that we need to be talking about as a country. I started my career as a community organizer, so I see a lot of what motivated me as a young person and how I learned from early movements that I worked in to learn strategy, to learn how to reach out to people in community engagement and how to get involved in politics. So I'm looking forward to seeing the leaders of that movement become the young elected officials in our country as we move forward. I also want to say Atlanta is the birthplace of the nonviolent civil disobedience movement in this country. And I've always felt bad that we have not embraced that more, have not brought it to our schools, and have not really been a leader in these kinds of discussions across the country. So I'd like to see Black Lives Matter and combine with our nonviolent history to work, to organize even more.
Thank you. Vincent Fort?
I have said publicly that I believe Black Lives Matter is the most important social movement, along with the Fight for 15 movement in this country, most important. And I've not only said that, I've not only talked the talk, I've walked the walk, literally. I've been in the street with Black Lives Matter, advising them, observing, making sure that they were not brutalized in the streets of the city of Atlanta. But beyond that, when City Hall sent them to jail, I not only spoke up, but I got the money, raised the bail money to get them out of jail. So I've not only talked the talk, I've walked the walk. That's why I invited Black Lives Matter to a forum at Lindsay Street Baptist Church to explain to the community, because they were being libeled in many places. I wanted them to talk directly to the community. And then finally, that's why I've gone to the Civilian Review Board with Black Lives Matter and spoke up to make sure that the Civilian Review Board is not allowed to degenerate into a paper tiger. Thank you.
So it's a legitimate movement and it's a valid concern. Unlike talk that you're hearing up here on the stage, I'm the one that's done something about it. I'm the one that brought up the attention, the fact that there are more black people who are incarcerated in metropolitan Atlanta than New York City. I'm the one that reduced the jail population in Fulton County, which 90% of the folks are African American males, reduced it from 4,500 down to 2,500. I'm the one that reduced the bookings from 45,000 down to 25,000. I'm the one that created 2 expungement summits that serve African American men and restricted the records of 1,000 people who have an arrest record in their past. I'm the one that's calling for the Atlanta Detention Center, which is one of 2 jails in Atlanta that costs about $35 million, that incarcerates low-risk, nonviolent offenders. I'm the one that said close it down and reinvest those $35 million into workforce development programs and after-school programs for African-American boys.
Tom, thank you. Keisha?
Frederick Douglass said almost 150 years ago, if there is no struggle, there is no progress. Power concedes nothing without a demand. And I am so very happy to see that the power structure has been challenged by young people. I have 4 children, 3 of whom are African-American boys. My oldest is 15. And I'm very glad that he has an example of young people who are agitating the establishment, who are asking for change. What I would like to see more of, just as there was with the civil rights movement, now that the voices are being heard, that we have a responsibility as a generation a bit older to make sure that we are providing guidance and structure so that when voices are heard and change is asked for, that we know what the tangible asks are. Because it's important that we be responsible leaders, and I'll talk more about that as it relates to our marijuana legislation.
Thank you. Peter?
I absolutely support Black Lives Matter because it represents actionable outrage. And that's something I'm not hearing enough of in some of the forums that we have. I'm not here to preach. I'm not in a position to preach, but I am in a position to underscore the message. Black Lives Matter represents a voicing of the brutality of what is happening to African American men and women, boys and girls. There's some research that shows that police officers are more likely to shoot a black man with a wallet than a white man with a gun. All I have to say to that is I wasn't told whether you had a dump button or not here today, so I won't curse. But it's absolutely ridiculous. And as chief operating officer, when I saw something happening I didn't think was right, The Red Dog unit, this aggressive policing unit we had, did illegal strip searches of people by the side of the road. I worked with Chief Turner and the mayor, and I had that unit disbanded because we can't tolerate that in the city of Atlanta.
Tom, thank you. That concludes round 2 of our forum. Let's give all of these very well qualified candidates a round of applause. We will be back with more of the 2017 Mayoral Forum on News and Talk 1380 WAOK and the People Station V103, Atlanta's #1 for hip hop and R&B.
Mayoral Forum on News and Talk 1380 WAOK and the People Station V103. My name is Ryan Cameron from the Ryan Cameron Morning Show with Wanda Smith. This is segment 3 of our mayoral debate this morning. We're going to now have our audience questions. We have had cards that have been passed out. Questions will be read by audience monitors Derek Bozeman from News and Talk 1380 WOK and Gerard J. from the People Station V103. There will also be some social media questions that we'll pose to our candidates this morning. Let's start with you, Derek Bozeman.
All right, these questions have been sent forward, so they are not mine. Let's just make sure that we say that. And they've been directed to specific people. This is to Michael Stirling. What do you think is the best approach to ending homelessness in Atlanta?
Thank you for that question. Michael Stirling here, next mayor of Atlanta. I think the best approach to ending homelessness in the city of Atlanta is that we have to provide a pathway to self-sufficiency. And so while there's no silver bullet, we've got to do a number of things correct, which include providing educational attainment, workforce development, wraparound services like mental health. The ultimate goal should be to get someone on a path to self-sufficiency. So we've got to break a lot of our homeless providers out of their silos, get them to work together to provide support for one another. So if someone provides housing and someone provides mental services and someone provides clothing and someone provides temporary assistance and workforce development, we've got to be working together on all of those different issues to provide somebody take them from a place of homelessness to a place of self-sufficiency. Michael Stirling for mayor.
Gerard J.
This one is for Mr. Fort. What have you done in the Georgia legislature to help Atlanta with transportation funding and help with expressway lighting?
Thank you. In 2016, in the legislature, I supported a referendum or allowing Atlanta to put a referendum on the ballot to expand MARTA, 0.5 cent, half cent. I supported it because of 2 things. One, it would expand the MARTA rail line in southwest Atlanta from Hamilton Homes to I-285 and MLK. And it would create circulation into neighborhoods with smaller buses as opposed to long walks to bus stops. I'm very disappointed the City Council is going to allow, it apparently, is going to allow Emory to jump in line. The citizens of Atlanta last November, when they voted for that half cent, did not say, we want to build from DeKalb County to Emory. City Council is about to allow Emory to annex into the city. That would be jumping in line. That would be unfair to Southwest Atlanta and the other parts of the city that voted on that.
Derek.
Keisha Lansbottom, what specifically are your plans to provide more positive opportunities for young people?
Thank you. I think there has to be a collaboration with the city specifically so that we can expand opportunities for young people. I worked tirelessly to make sure that all of our recreation centers were open. Now that they are open, we have to fortify the programming in those recreation centers. We also have to extend opportunities not just to our young people, but to families as a whole. So we are providing tutoring, if we are providing summer employment for young people, it's not enough if we are still sending them back home into chaos. That also means that we have to provide job training, we have to provide GED classes, et cetera, social services where needed so that we can round out our families as a whole. But the most important part is that our young people have access in their communities where they have access to expand their employment opportunities and also fortify their education opportunities.
Gerard.
Ms. Willard, you are a champion of the Beltline. Affordability is a part of your platform. Do you think that the Beltline has been a failure around affordability?
Thank you. I do think it's been a failure around affordability, and I think that what we should do is rethink entirely the structure of the Atlanta Beltline from start to finish. I think that after 15 years of failure to produce affordable housing, we should take the responsibility for building that housing out of ABI and give it to the Atlanta Housing Authority or some other agency while directing the funding that is generated from the TAD to support doing that. I also want to say that I spoke out vociferously about the new contract with Brian McGowan, the CEO, where basically he can't be terminated without a $300,000 minimum payout. It's ridiculous. We don't operate government like that, where people sign a contract and basically in his first 3 years he gets $1 million. It's ridiculous, and we've got to change what we're doing, and it's one of the reasons I'm in this race. I'm Kathy Willard. I'm fighting for ATL.
Derek?
Well, this goes to everybody, starting with Mr. Amon. Given the high racial climate in this country, a listener from our live stream would like every candidate to declare their party affiliation, Democrat, Republican, Green Party, or other. Mr. Amon.
Peter Amon, I'm a Democrat, and if I could just expand on that for a second, the issue of race frames this election. It's not the only issue we should be talking about. It's not even necessarily the first issue we should be talking about. But from day one of this campaign, I've been talking about the fact that we have to have this discussion. We have to have a discussion about race. Frankly, if I were elected, I'd be the first white guy in like 50 years in Atlanta. That's a big deal. That needs to be discussed, and we need to have this openly, a dialogue on this openly. I'm Peter Amon.
I'm Keisha Lance Bottoms. I'm a Democrat, lifelong Democrat, and I think it's important that we have this conversation, especially as we talk about this race, because we can't talk about Republicans and Democrats without talking about the policies of Donald Trump and the impact that it has on our community, whether or not it be related to sanctuary cities or the policies at a local level related to racial profiling. It's important that we know where people stand and that we don't hide behind where we stand. We should all proudly own our party affiliation and all of the values that go along with it. That is why I am very proud to say that I am a Democrat, and I am the only candidate who has publicly called upon our national legislatures to explore the impeachment of Donald Trump.
John Eves, lifelong Democrat. So this issue of race manifests itself in a couple ways. Number one, how can we as a city allow among the 252 neighborhoods, some of them to be third world-like? I used to work for the Peace Corps, and some of these neighborhoods, whether it's Grove Park or Thomasville or Mechanicsville, look like third world countries. And it's happened under the watch of these city council folks. So I believe that equity does not mean giving an equal distribution of resources evenly. It means putting a disproportionate amount in areas that have not gotten it in the past. And so I'm committed as the next mayor to launch a major Marshall-like plan that will invest $1 billion in 10 of the worst neighborhoods, much like what was done in Eastlake when that community was transformed over a 10-year period. So to me, racism is manifested in how we have disparity in our neighborhoods.
I was a Democratic with the number 2 position in the Senate Democratic Caucus. I'm a lifelong Democrat, never voted for a Republican, never will, as some people on this stage have. But I want you to know that, my Democratic bona fides are not a manifestation of the last 6 months. I have not had an election year epiphany to tout my Democratic roots, as some people have. I'm a Democrat, but more importantly, I'm a people Democrat. When, as I already said, when these people were voting to displace African Americans, I was fighting the banks to stabilize our neighborhoods. So it's not just saying I'm a Democrat, it's standing up and fighting for people who need help. Not a nod squad, but somebody who's going to stand up for people who can't stand up for themselves.
Kwanzaa Hall. I'm a lifelong Democrat, and I believe that Atlanta's been great at building buildings, but not so good at loving its people. I represent a part of town that has the greatest concentration of poverty, primarily young African-American women, 18 to 25 years old. Average income is $3,000 a year. Average rent is $12 a month. This is the Boulevard area, Bedford Pines community. When we think about the growth of our city, a lot of times we leave out about 150,000 people. And race as well as class really will be the defining measure of the next mayor. And that's why I'm running for mayor, because I'm going to put people first in every decision we make, instead of the big projects, instead of the developers, instead of all those groups that really have defined how we make our decisions. And I've done it as a council member. I'll do the same thing for you as mayor. Kwanzaa Hall for mayor. Thank you.
I'm a lifelong Democrat. I've worked hard to get Democrats elected here locally and around the state. I was one of the first 10 elected officials to publicly endorse President Barack Obama when he ran the first time. I stood up real early when no one else was standing up for his candidacy. We got to talk about race, but we also got to be about race. We got to make sure we're working hard to deal with the issues that racism impacts. And so as a council member and as council president, I've been very focused on making sure that black children in this city have an opportunity to get a quality education and move on to college through my college prep program. You got to make sure you got access to capital, the opportunity to be able to start a business and run a business and employ people. I've been working for 6 years with a program called Atlanta Back to Business, providing real opportunities for small businesses, businesses that have been redlined, businesses that don't get access to capital because of the color of their skin. So if we're going to talk about race, we can do that. But we got to be about race together. And when I'm mayor, we're going to be about race together. Thank you.
And I'm Mary Norwood, and I am a lifelong independent. I have never been involved in either political party. I've never been a member of either political party. My love is in the community. My love is in each neighborhood and each individual in this town. And so what I want to do as your next mayor is what I have done through 3 terms as your city council representative, and that is to care about each and every community. I have been protecting communities and preserving neighborhoods for 25 years. I will do that for every single citizen in our town.
Michael Stirling here, the next mayor of Atlanta. You know, I am a lifelong Democrat. Was appointed as one of the youngest federal prosecutors by Attorney General Eric Holder under the Obama administration. But Derek, it isn't just about labeling yourself a Democrat. It's about being about what the Democratic Party stands for. A former governor of Georgia said, the Democratic Party is here for people who weren't born rich and lucky. And I think about my own life starting in an orphanage. And I think about the fact that I'm so glad my social worker didn't wait to an election year to make a change in my life, but that she did it because she cared about the issues we were facing. So as Atlanta becomes the most unequal city in America with income inequality at the worst in the country, as we face the worst economic mobility, as we face inequities in our education system, as we face massive corruption at City Hall, as we face 80% of African American children living in poverty, this isn't just about labeling yourself a Democrat. It's about being what the Democratic Party is supposed to be about, and that is looking out for the least of these.
I'm Kathy Willard. I'm a Democrat, too. I've been a delegate to the Democratic National Convention. I've worked on social justice issues at the Capitol here in Atlanta and in Washington my entire career. Let's be really clear. When Mary Norwood said she's an independent, she may be an independent, but the people who are backing her are not. This city is give me my time. Can I have my time?
Yes, thank you. Audience, please.
This is a 20% Republican city. Those voters are clustered around Mary Norwood, and they want to steal the jewel in the crown. Let's be very, very clear that if we have a Republican mayor, we won't be mobilizing Democrats in the governor's race, opposing gerrymandering, or any of the other things that are important to us. I'm Kathy Willard. I'm a Democrat.
May I respond?
Yes. Hold on, wait, guys. Let's give Mary Norwood an opportunity to respond to that.
I just want to say that I am enjoying support from citizens all across the city. We have 3,500 yard signs across the city, and they are in every single NPU, every single council district, every single zip code. We have gotten contributions from every single zip code, every single council district, every single NPU. My campaign is inclusive of every single person in this town. That is the way I will govern this city.
Gerard?
This is for John Eves. As you talk about your care and concern for the community, how have you been out in various communities other than legislating, writing checks, or serving on boards of organizations?
Well, I've had the honor the past 10 years of being the chairman of the largest government in the state of Georgia, local government. So I've been from Alpharetta down to Palmetto. I got 63% of the vote in my last election because people trusted me, and I've done a good job. One of the things I'm very proud about that really is very community-oriented is I did an expungement summit. I mentioned this earlier. I got out in the community. I listened to the stories of people who are ex-offenders or folks who had one small blemish on their record 10, 20, 30 years ago in which they made one mistake, never got convicted, but that thing burdened them in terms of getting jobs, in terms of getting housing, in terms of getting financial aid for colleges or university. I got out there in the community. I partnered with Raphael Warnock of Ebenezer Baptist Church and served 1,000 people. I'm very proud about that. That is just one example of how I was in the community and helped and served people. Thank you so much.
Derek?
This is a great question. Many of you are running a campaign with bragging rights about being from the South Side. But the South Side has seen little development when compared to the North Side. Why is that? And what will you do to bring about progress on the South Side? And this question is directed at Kwanzaa Hall.
Thank you. Now, when you're a council member, you need to stay in your own lane and represent your district, okay? You don't get out of your lane, but I have to say it's a travesty. I grew up off of Campbellton Road over by Cascade, by the beautiful restaurant. There are less restaurants now than when I was growing up. There's less amenities on Campbellton, Cascade, Martin Luther King, and all the streets that run through the black neighborhood. It's fallen in disrepair. We should be ashamed of ourselves. We should be really ashamed. And that's why, as mayor, my focus will be a neighborhood revitalization program throughout all of our legacy neighborhoods, like Adamsville, Collier Heights. Collier Heights used to be a pride and joy neighborhood, and we have allowed it to fall to nothing. And I'm going to bring restaurants back. Restaurants that we can be proud of. Think about 285 and Cascade. What do we have there to eat? Some of the most powerful people live in that neighborhood, and you can't blame it on anyone else but ourselves. So as mayor, I'm going to commit to bringing the same amount of amenities that you see on the north side, that you see in in-town neighborhoods, to all of our city. Thank you. I don't have my clap crowd here like everybody else. This is Kwanzaa Hall.
Duly noted. Gerard?
Okay, Peter Amon. Citizens have lost trust in the politicians of Atlanta. What is your plan to regain that trust in the citizens?
Yes, thank you. So this is the first time I've run for political office. By and large, everybody up here has run many, many times. They have entire fundraising machines, entire groups of people, many of whom are vendors or contractors to the city who are contributing to their campaigns. I am matching my contributors dollar for dollar because I believe it's important to represent, in the case I'm fortunate enough that I can, that I'm independent of my contributors. Specifically, when I'm mayor, we're going to post every check the city writes, we're going to post what company it goes to, and most importantly, we're going to post who owns that company. When I'm mayor, we're going to audio record the conversations between vendors and city officials, and we're going to post the transcripts. Other cities and states do this. When I'm mayor, I'm going to personally train all 8,000 employees in ethics and what I require of them so that we have regained faith in the city of Atlanta ethics. We have to have that.
Derek?
Cesar Mitchell, how has your experience as council president prepared you to be mayor?
First of all, being council president means you got to be able to bring folks together, number one. Provide leadership on the council side, and in my time on council, we've been able to do great things, working with the administration, not always in agreement. But also, I've used the role as council president to do more than what the job description says. I've been actively engaged on the community level, working to create strong partnerships with our school system, standing up when we've seen conflicts between the City of Atlanta and APS, saying that we've got to do the right thing for our children. I've been working on helping small businesses find greater capital, greater opportunity, not only in government but in the private space. You got to take the position you have and use it the best way you can to help as many people as you can. And as City Council President, I've been focused on that as it relates to creating greater opportunities to make our neighborhoods safe, making sure we're creating greater opportunities for our young people to find college and career, and creating strong opportunities for our neighborhoods to become clean, green, safe, and thriving. Thank you.
Gerard.
Mary Norwood, what plans do you have to ensure that black businesses are the beneficiaries of city contracts?
Well, I will make sure that we keep the MBE program, the Disadvantaged Minority Program, at the airport, in the city. I have been a strong proponent of making sure that everyone has equal access, and that includes all of our minority vendors. I will have a task force of minority contractors and other engineers and architects, along with non-minority architects and engineers and contractors, that will look at our procurement code and figure out where there are glitches, i.e. the bonding capacity, where smaller firms can't compete, which directly affects minority firms, and other glitches that are in that procurement process. And then I will take their recommendations. As I have met with vendors across the city, many, many minority vendors, they want a level playing field. I will give them that.
Derek.
Kathy Willard, do you feel MARTA should expand its rail line? And if so, where should it go and who should pay for it?
Wow, that's a big question. Yes, of course, I do think that MARTA should expand its rail line. I am a transit advocate on all points. I think MARTA should expand its rail line where the most ridership can benefit from it. I'm like Vincent Fort, I have spoken out about the Emory annexation because we don't have enough information, and I don't think that they should get to jump the line. If Emory wants transit, then they should have negotiated that with DeKalb County. But in the meantime, we've got the money to build the last mile here in the city of Atlanta, and I think for once, we should be selfish in that regard and build 5 transit lines here in the city so that people can have the last mile transportation and then work regionally to expand transit across the region and let other jurisdictions in the region help pay for it. And finally, we need to go to the General Assembly and insist that our state pay for transit operations because we're the only state in the country that doesn't.
We'll be back for our final segment after this, right here on News and Talk 1380 WOK and the People Station V103, the ATL's #1 for hip-hop and R&B. Our Mayoral Forum 2017 continues right after this. And we are back for the final segment of our 2017 Mayoral Forum on News and Talk 1380 WOK and the People Station V103, the ATL's #1 for hip-hop and R&B. I am Ryan Cameron from the Ryan Cameron Morning Show with Wanda Smith, along with Rashad Ritchie from News and Talk 1380 WOK. For this final segment, we have some random questions that have been presented to our candidates who are on the stage with us right now: Peter Amon, Keisha Lance Bottoms, John Eves, Vincent Fort, Kwanzaa Hall, Caesar Mitchell, Mary Norwood, Michael Stirling, and Kathy Willard. They have not seen these questions. They will pick them up and read them, and then how long do they have to answer?
They have 1 minute.
1 minute to answer. So we'll start with you, Peter, if you'll read your question and then answer it. Sure, you can go ahead and you can.
Okay. So the question is, would you ever go on Dancing with the Stars? I have to say, of all the questions I was prepared for today, this was not one of them. I have absolutely no sense of rhythm. I cannot maintain a beat. I'm in church and I'm clapping and I get off clap. And if people do double claps, I'm completely lost. So as much as I'm happy to make fun of myself, I think Dancing with the Stars would probably be sort of one step too far. And I'm really not very coordinated on top of everything else. So I don't know that I have a lot to add to that.
Well, I'm just surprised you said the double clap out. So what church do you go to?
Well, I go to churches all over the city.
I mean, that sounds really like some Baptist church to me, right?
Yeah, there are a lot of Baptist churches. The double clap, I completely get lost. So
if you would have said the triple clap, then I would have been worried.
Well, yeah.
While we have you standing here, Peter, if you would give us your closing statement, you have 1 minute.
1 minute, okay. Again, my name is Peter Amon. There are three things that distinguish me from the other individuals up on this stage. I bring a unique combination of experience, ethics, and leadership. In terms of experience, I've worked in both business and in government. In business, I helped many complex organizations. In government, I helped both Mayor Franklin and the Reid administration run the City of Atlanta government. In ethics, I ran my company's ethics program for 7 years. I rebuilt it and I helped it operate across several dozen countries. So I know ethics. At the city, whenever I saw something that was being done wrong or that was questionable, I had it investigated and I had people fired, unfortunately. I held people to the highest ethical standards. And I have a demonstrated track record across nonprofits, business, the government, and the neighborhood, founding everything from organizations that work on homelessness to public safety. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Keisha Lance Bottoms, you'll read your question and give us your answer, then your closing statement.
Thank you. If you had a chance for one do-over in your life, what would you choose? And I would say if I could guarantee that I would get to be the mother to my 4 wonderful children, I would have adopted my children sooner. My mother always says that old people don't have any business with young kids, so I wish that I had had the opportunity to give them a little more of my youth as a mother. But I'm very grateful to be their mother, and I just wish that I had done it sooner.
And now your 1 minute close.
I started off by talking about Atlanta being a tale of two cities. And as we look at what's happening across our country and across our world, we cannot leave this election up to chance. We have an opportunity in this city to lead on a national and a world level, and we can't sit home and sit by idly and wait for someone else to lead us as a city. This is our moment. I talk about Atlanta being, I talk about a horse and buggy moment as it relates to my great-grandparents coming to Atlanta, children of former slaves. There was opportunity in this city. There's still opportunity in this city, but it requires great leadership, and it requires someone who's thinking about not just today, but the next generation. I am running for mayor because someone thought about me. Someone thought about me as an 8-year-old girl and made it possible for me to stand here today. I ask that you join me in leading us into the future and leading us into the greatness that we already know that we have as a city. Thank you.
John Eves.
So John Eves, my question is, where's your favorite place to visit in Atlanta? That's very easy. It's Morehouse College. Many years ago, as a 17-year-old kid, I followed in the footsteps of my dad, who was a Morehouse graduate. And when I got to Morehouse, I became a scholar athlete, played on the football team, majored in mathematics, used my time to get involved in the communities. But more importantly, I heard the great clarion call from great leaders who were Morehouse graduates like Maynard Jackson and Michael Lomax and Reginald Eves. And I heard Benjamin Mays, who talked about ethical leadership. And those words and those role models served as a basis, Ryan, for me to embrace ethical leadership. And friends, that's why I'm running for mayor. It's about leadership and it's about integrity. I feel great about the past 10 years that I've served as a chairman of the largest local government in the state of Georgia, delivered some excellent results in terms of transportation, criminal justice reform, economic development, and also doing all of that corruption-free. City Hall needs an overhaul. It is ethically challenged right now. It needs an overhaul. My friends, the leadership and the track record and the integrity are all essential qualities that I bring as your next mayor. Thank you so much.
Vincent Fort.
When you want to escape politics, what do you do to relax? Not much. No, I have a couple of books on my nightstand. One is a history of the civil rights movement that I have not been able to get to, and another one is a novel about Auburn Avenue and politics in this city. So so I have a couple of books on my nightstand that I'm really looking forward to getting to very soon. But this journey we call public service is about the people that you meet. About 5 years ago, I got an email from a woman by the name of Bridget Walker. She was an Iraqi war veteran who came home injured with shrapnel in her body. And in that email, she told me that Chase Bank was going to take her house. When she came back and was injured, her income, her pay was cut in half. Chase was about to take her house. She was many months behind. She had seen me on the television saving the house of a 104-year-old woman in northwest Atlanta. We went to Chase. We told Chase, you're not going to take her house under any circumstances. Chase did the right thing after we prodded them and made sure that she stayed in her house, and she's in that house to this very day. When City Hall was looking the other way, when our neighborhoods were destabilized and gentrified, I was fighting for people like Bridget Walker. I'll continue that fight. It's my life's journey. As your mayor, I will work with you on that fight. My name is Vincent Fort, and I want to be your 60th mayor.
Kwanzaa Hall.
If you could possess one superpower for a day, which would you choose and why? Wow. I mean, there's some good ones out there, but I'm just going to say real honestly, it would be justice and equality for all, and that's not a traditional superpower. But we know it does not exist in our society, and it doesn't exist in our city. And we can do it. As far as my closing argument, Atlanta's been great at building buildings, but not so good at building and loving its people. We don't need a white mayor, black mayor, gay mayor, or straight mayor. We need a mayor who put people and neighborhoods first, as I've done in the heart of the city for the last 15 years. I was born and raised in Southwest Atlanta. It's a travesty that we've allowed our city to fall into disrepair. I don't believe the big corporate interests need to take over this city or continue to run them. We have a lot of great things going for us. Our growth trajectory is really good, but we are leaving people behind. We're leaving people in the margins. And the legacy that we have in this city that Dr. King and so many other people gave their lives for, like my father, Leon Hall, and Hosea Williams, really predicates that we have to do something different from the way we've been doing it. I'm Kwanzaa Hall, and I'll be everybody's mayor. Thank you.
Caesar Mitchell.
My question was, what is the best piece of advice you have ever received? You know, the best piece of advice I received actually was as a young freshman council member. I was banging my head against the wall, very frustrated about a piece of legislation that I had introduced and wanted to make sure it was right. And one of the senior council members saw me struggling, and she said, Caesar, calm down. You know, don't take yourself too seriously. Take the work you're doing seriously, but don't take yourself too seriously. And the message that sent to me was that essentially you've got to make sure you're working hard and you have a spirit of service, but don't forget to smile and don't forget to smell the roses. Don't forget to really just work with people in a collaborative fashion. That was the best piece of advice I ever received, and it really helped me to work and serve beyond the bounds of the office that I was serving in. Essentially, I just want to thank V103 and WAOK and all of the moderators here and all of you who are here today and all of you who are listening on radio or watching this online. I'm running for mayor because I want Atlanta to meet its promise to every young person growing up in this city. I'm running for mayor because I want every senior citizen who has served and sacrificed all their lives to experience the joy of being in this city and reaping the benefits of all that they have invested in this city. I'm running for mayor because I want this city to be a village again. I want this city to be the place that embraces everyone and leaves no one behind. And we're going to do this because we're going to focus on making sure that we're getting our young people educated. So when I'm mayor, we're going to focus on a true partnership between APS and the city of Atlanta. I want to make sure our neighborhoods are safe and no longer burdened by crime. I want to make sure we have affordable housing. But we can only do that together. And I want to serve as your next mayor. I don't want to be your next mayor. I want to serve as your next mayor. I'm Caesar Mitchell, and I'd love to have your support and your vote. Thank you.
Mary Norwood.
My question is, who is the most important person in your life? All of us who have spouses or partners or significant others know that the right answer for this question is my husband. And in my case, it's because Felton Norwood was a pediatrician in this town for 40 years. He nurtured children, he nurtured families all over this city. His daughter is now following in his footsteps. She is a pediatrician in East Point, and she serves children and families all over this city. It's a really wonderful calling. I am running to be your mayor because I have been serving in a different way citizens all over this city for 25 years, protecting communities, preserving neighborhoods, and enhancing people's quality of life. I want our city to be run where there is trust in the government, where it is accountable, it is transparent, it is responsive, so that everyone has the quality of life they deserve in this town. And that means affordability, that means sustainability, that means beauty, that means cleanliness, that means mobility, that means all of the things that we all treasure, so that every person and every family and every company, every business can thrive in this town. That's why I'm running for mayor, and I hope to be your mayor as the 60th mayor of the city of Atlanta. Thank you.
Michael Stirling.
Thank you so much, Michael Stirling. My question is, what is your favorite movie theater snack food? And I would have to say it's Twizzlers, and that's mostly because it's also my girlfriend's favorite movie theater snack food, and when I was trying to win her over, I had to really like the Twizzlers. You know, I started running for mayor because I believed that we needed to do something different in our city. I believed that the issues and challenges we were facing required the fierce urgency of the moment. And when I was running a workforce development agency, kids used to come into my office needing help. Homeless individuals used to come to my office looking for a path to employment. Homeless veterans used to come to my office, single mothers. And I used to see the pain of people every day who just needed us to do something different. And it weighed on me. And here in the city of Atlanta, where we have the worst income inequality in the country, where we've got the worst economic mobility, and where we have politicians who are putting contributors ahead of community, we've got to do something different. I'm telling you, listening on the radio right now, don't fall for the con. It is time for us to do something different in the city of Atlanta because our political status quo has failed us. And Michael Stirling will provide something different, a new vision and a new direction for our city to solve our challenges and solve our problems. Michael Stirling, I look forward to serving as your next mayor. Thank you.
Kathy Willard.
Hi, I'm Kathy Willard, and I'm running for mayor. My question is, if you were not a politician and you won $1 million from the Georgia lottery, what is the first thing you would do? Well, the first thing I would do is probably take a really long vacation, but we'll get to that later. What I would do is what I've been doing my whole career, which is fighting for social justice. I was a Peace Corps volunteer right after college. I earned $7 a day for 2 years. I lived in a plywood house with a corrugated tin roof, and I began to experience what it is like to try to live on a very, very extreme income that I couldn't change. From there, I've been working on every kind of social justice issue you can possibly imagine, and I wouldn't do anything else. I would take that $1 million and invest it in companies and nonprofits that are working on the root causes of inequality, and that's what I'll always do in my life until I die. I'm running for mayor because I'm fighting for ATL, affordability, transportation, and livability. I have a plan for how we can put down 5 lines of transit in the next 10 years, orient density and affordability around those transit lines so people can afford to live and get somewhere without a car, and build a world-class city that has schools that work, art and parks, and economic development that is good for everyone, from people who make very, very high salaries to those who need a livable wage. I'm Kathy Willard. I'm fighting for ATL. Thank you.
Let me do this. Timekeeper, give me 20 seconds for this question. We live in the greatest civil rights city in America. Lately, there seems to be a re-embrace of white bigotry, white nationalism, and white supremacy, protected by the President of the United States. What are your thoughts about Trump? Let me start with Kathy Willard. We'll come down. 20 seconds, please.
I try to have very few thoughts about Trump. I oppose virtually everything that he stands for, and I have spent, again, my career working against just this thing. For the last 4 years, I've been the lead lobbyist trying to defeat the religious extremism bills down at the state capitol, and I'll continue to work against those policies as long as I can.
I think President Trump is a disaster as president. I think he is promoting and enabling individuals to take on these extremely and extraordinarily racist views. He's been more harsh on NFL football players than he's been on Charlottesville's white supremacists. And I think that he's got his priorities misaligned, and he does not truly represent the voice of the American people, and he certainly doesn't represent the conscience of our country.
Tom.
I abhor any racism, any bigotry, any violence, any supremacy of any type. So I am absolutely opposed to any policies that reinforce that 100%.
Hold on, wait a minute. But Ms. Norwood, what do you think about Trump, President Trump?
We have a president. I am telling you that I do not support those policies. I am saying to this audience that I do not support any policies that are bigotry, that are racism, that are in any way related to...
Hold on, audience, please, calm down. Thank you. Audience, we're not doing that. Calm down. Thank you. Ms. Norwood, will you finish with your response?
I am finished.
Okay. Mr. Mitchell?
I think 45, is a disaster. He's a disaster not only for, America, but he's a disaster for the world. I think if we're going to have a president of the United States that's going to come to the city of Atlanta and promote the NRA and not even go and see Dr. King's crypt, I think we got someone who's on the wrong track. I completely disagree with this presidency and him.
Kwanzaa Hall.
Yes. Well, I voted for Hillary Clinton, and he is our president. I'm definitely opposed to anyone who allows the vestiges of racism and our past transgressions to revive themselves as they have under the current administration. I have to say also, Mr. Sessions is wrong on marijuana in particular. I believe we should legalize it in all the states, and I'm going to push for that here. When I'm mayor in Atlanta, we're going to make marijuana legal in the state of Georgia. We will be legal in Georgia when I'm finished. Thank you.
Tom. Senator Fort.
I want to just say ditto to everything, except for what Ms. Norwood said, or didn't say. I think that Donald Trump needs to be impeached. It's easy as that. I have advocated that, even though people are saying they're the only person who have advocated that. Go on my Twitter feed. Hashtag impeach Trump.
Tom. Ms. Norwood, since he did mention your name, would you like to respond?
Mr. Ritchie, we have a president. I may not like the president. I may not support the policies that are in this country and that are being promoted, but we have a president. This is what happens in this country. That election stands. If people wish to impeach the president, they wish to impeach the president. But I, as the next mayor, will be committed to getting the most I can get for Atlanta in financial resources, from every single part of the governments in this country.
Thank you, ma'am. John Eves.
Donald Trump is an enigma, he's narcissistic, and he's divisive. The best thing that we can do right now is to elect a mayor who is the antithesis of Donald Trump, a person who is inclusive, a person who is transparent, and is generally has the people's heart that they hold dear.
Tom, thank you. Ms. Bottoms.
The impeachment or removal of Donald Trump is more important than 120 characters. That is why I have previously publicly gone into detail about the need to impeach him. I think that we should all be concerned as we may be watching the rise of Hitler.
So ditto to many of the comments from my colleagues on the stage, with the exception of Ms. Norwood. The failing of Donald Trump to call out The racist marchers in Charlottesville was absolutely astounding and horrific, and one of the worst public things that he's done, along with a long list of other things. I don't have time, since it says stop, to go through the whole list, but there's a long list.
Thank you. Let's have a round of applause for all of our candidates for participating today. We want to give acknowledgement to the Georgia Coalition for the People's Agenda and Committee for a Better Atlanta. We have to remind you to pick up your voter registration forms and CBA scores. Remind everybody that tomorrow is the last day to register to vote.
We have a lot of, hold on for a second, all of these are greatly qualified individuals. Can we get an agreement that if you make a runoff, will you come back to V103 and WAOK to talk back to the citizens of Atlanta? Can we get an agreement? Thank you.